Welcome to Liberty UA. Denis Eliseevich joins us today. Welcome, Denis.
Hello, Tatiana. Hello, viewers.
Viewers, please subscribe to Liberty UA and Denis Eliseevich's channels. We'll begin our conversation with this tragic situation, as October 2 is a day of mourning in Odessa. This occurred because 10 people died in bad weather on September 30, and now there are different opinions about this. Could this catastrophe have been prevented or not? The situation cannot be changed, but we understand that if there is rain or floods in the future, what will happen? So in your opinion, what was the reason people died? Was it only the bad weather, or are there other factors?
No, I can actually talk about this topic in great detail. I myself live in the city, in the state of Florida, in Miami. It's a tropical climate. Here, it rains 3 times a day. Sometimes there are crazy rains, hurricanes, and downpours. It's always only the local authorities who are to blame, meaning those who actually have the real competencies, those who have the budget. The budget of Odessa is enormous, the budget of Kiev is enormous, but things like this always happen there. The situation is the same in other Ukrainian cities. I can name Trukhanov or Klitschko in Kyiv. That's it, remember. I want to tell people, all mayors in Ukraine are the same. You come to the position not as someone who wants to change something, make history, or fulfill yourself, but as if you've just been allowed to the feeding trough. Thousands of huge tenders for enormous amounts of money go through the city, and most of these tenders are given to people under their control. Can you imagine what kind of billion hryvnia budgets we're talking about? Next, municipal, how should I put it, property needs to be privatized just like it is at the state level. They keep using all of it, using it. One mayor came. A mayor comes in, basically, he has the city, the budget, everything is on temporary lease, and he's skimming off the top. And state property means it belongs to no one. Municipal city property means it belongs to no one. That's the thing. But when it's private, there's an owner who won't allow theft or inefficiency. For example, in Miami, I'll tell you. So when there's heavy rain, some areas get flooded so badly that cars get submerged. Car insurance is very expensive here because flooded cars are a common thing. But as soon as this kind of situation happens, there are special vehicles everywhere that pump out the water from the storm drains and clean them. In short, the utility workers are working hard. That's a big difference, when people actually work and when they don't. The climate here is harsher. Do they have such heavy rain or extreme weather in Ukraine? No, this is just how local authorities operate here. It's terrible. People, including a child, died there. It's awful.
An entire family died, and even on the internet, people wrote that the woman was on her balcony. She saw the man screaming and being swept away by the water, unsure how to help and unable to do anything. But let's find out the reason. There are 2 options. Either the sewage system wasn't working properly, wastewater wasn't draining well, no money was invested, and it wasn't repaired. By the way, Kuleba will be dealing with this issue. Zelensky appointed him responsible for this situation, and he will find out whether there were any violations or not. At the moment, no criminal cases have been opened. Next situation. There were supposedly and still are dense buildings in the lowlands, and they block the natural flow of water, so the water doesn't flow as it should because these buildings prevent it. Which reason do you think it is, the first or the second?
Altogether, and the buildings. I'm sure in Odessa, just like in Kiev. But in Kiev, I know for sure as a resident, there is no master plan. So there isn't one, clearly. In America, you can't just do whatever you want, but at the same time, you won't be over-regulated so much that you can't do business. Clear, understandable rules of the game. Basically, you follow them and no one bothers you after that. But in Ukraine, it's chaos. What you said happens too, but there's this commission. Which Kuleba do you mean? I don't know. Was that Kuleba the minister? If you want to ruin something, just create a commission. In Ukraine, whenever there's a disaster, commissions pop up everywhere. Verkhovna Rada, elsewhere. Has any commission ever actually finished its work? Maybe this will be a good reason for them to get rid of Trukhanov since they're enemies, but it's just one bad apple replacing another. They'll remove Trukhanov and put in someone of their own. It'll just be a power grab. That's why I don't really criticize the local authorities on air, even though I don't like them. They're the last check on the central government. I dislike both sides. They're alike. Without this, nothing will remain. Can you imagine how terrifying this is? There's a war, Odessa is constantly bombed, and people died not from Putin's missiles, but from the horror created by local authorities. You see, these are terrifying stories. You could write books about all of this.
I wonder what will happen next. There's an article, it was written by Suspilne, it came out in August, and it said that Trukhanov supposedly wanted more and better contact with the president's office. Supposedly, Odessa, which is constantly under attack, wanted more attention, and there was allegedly some tension in the relationship. What are your thoughts on the current situation? If it turns out that the authorities are actually involved in all of this and a criminal case is opened, if that happens, if the authorities' guilt is proven, then what happens next?
They'll remove Trukhanov and replace him with their own person, as I said. I think Kuleba is basically an obedient guy. He'll do whatever he's told. And in my opinion, he's just been put there to be the face of this story. The real control will be in the hands of completely different people, and nothing will fundamentally change. Do you think they'll bring in Zelensky or another reformer ready to get to work? Now I'm going to turn the city into a real gem, and Odessa is a magnificent city, truly our pearl. It's fine, they'll carry out additional Ukrainization. They'll introduce criminal liability for Ukrainization, or rather for the Russian language, something like that, in their style. You saw those special squads now patrolling Kiev. They came to some book market, and there, if you have books in Russian, well, that's it. For those who watched Game of Thrones, these are the White Walkers. In Ukraine, the White Walkers have awakened, and they're going around terrifying people.
But it's not that easy to just take and remove a mayor who was elected by the people. It's not that simple. Supposedly, according to the law, the secretary should take on these responsibilities. Or in a state of war, the military appointed by the administration. But let's suppose that if it turns out this way, or Trukhanov stays in his position, autumn is coming, there will be more rain. What are they doing about this now?
I don't know, and it's even pointless to discuss it because it doesn't matter. Trukhanov, Kurganov, everything will be the same. In Ukraine, people don't go into power. I repeat, make history, achieve greatness, fulfill yourself. You see, you think, look, here's an example, just to make it clearer for people. Donald Trump will be 80 years old next year. Do you think he had a bad time here at Mar-a-Lago, playing golf, enjoying life, having everything available to him, everything going perfectly? Did he need to nearly get killed to have someone shoot at him? All this stress and insane schedule? Yes, it's hard to watch, but in America you can actually influence change through levers of power. He went there to make history and be remembered as a top president. But in Ukraine, clans fight over who gets access to power. That's why I don't care whether Trukhanov will steal or, again, some Petrov or Sidorov. The question concerns a basic system change, and people must desire something new. They elected bandits in nearly every city, honestly. I don't mean to offend anyone. In nearly every regional center, the mayor is a bandit linked to mafia groups. That's it. What else can we talk about? I'm not an idealist, as many might think. There's nothing ideal there, but this just goes beyond any limits. Do you understand? This is a banana republic, and I didn't make it this way. They did, and let it happen.
The situation is unfortunate, and I want people to notice it. Because I remember that there was such a problem in Cherkasy, where the city's master plan was not clear, and the city boundaries were not clearly defined. And then the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning issued urban planning conditions and restrictions, and construction was carried out. Environmentalists warned the sewage systems couldn't handle it and said it was impossible, yet the buildings were still built. And this problem isn't just in Odessa, it's in other cities too, but in Odessa it happened this way also because of its location. That's why we really hope that this situation can somehow be resolved. But tell me, in this situation, if, let's say, you were in power or people like you were in power, what exactly would you do about the city's sewage system? How would you solve this issue?
I'm not ready to say, because I'm not privy to the realities. I don't know the full picture. Surely everything needs to be replaced there. It's all outdated. Start with a master plan and clear, understandable rules. Gradually remove what's unnecessary and organize the rest according to, for example, American standards. Remove unnecessary bureaucracy. Simply put, municipal property should be eliminated. And if then, believe me, if a person goes there who won't be sitting on tenders, the city will get much cheaper and higher quality services. And it turns out that 40% of the city budget is used for nothing, maybe even 50%. And just imagine, a normal mayor would have half of the budget at their disposal. But as it is, it just gets siphoned off, plain and simple. So I can only urge entrepreneurs in all cities of Ukraine, run for office. The political process will return to Ukraine, God willing. At least some form of democracy will return, at least to start with, so run for office. Stop letting this mafia in, people. Stop voting for the mafia, for those who go there to make money, for those who go to destroy Ukraine and each city individually. If people vote the same way as usual now, well, it will all end sadly. We'll meet with you every 5 years to review the maps and see what they've taken and where things are going wrong. I really wouldn't want that. I would like everyone to return to Ukraine and for us to start everything from scratch and do it right this time.
Odessa doesn't give me peace. Those people who died, I feel so sorry for them. And there are ports there. In Odessa, there are ports. These ports are not private. They are currently state-owned. To pass a law that supposedly they need to be leased to foreign investors. What do you think? If we assume that this will happen, can this money be directed to the sewage system and restored very quickly, or is it impossible?
The city has money. I'll tell you again, every city in Ukraine has enormous amounts of money. Here's one small credit you can give to Poroshenko. I think it was during Groisman's time as prime minister. They were terrible leaders, but some kind of decentralization was done. After that, enormous amounts of money remained in the cities. The money in local budgets was so huge that mayors didn't know what to do with it. And they put it in bank deposits just to collect interest. Then a law was passed that forbade them from doing that. So they were overflowing with money. So when it comes to the ports, I know the names. I know that it's also about clan struggles over who controls what. I won't mention any names on purpose because people might think I'm taking someone's side. It's all illegal. It's all banditry. It has nothing to do with a civilized society.
We sympathize with those who have suffered, and we really hope that the situation will improve in the future. At least there is hope for that. But as of today, the situation in Ukraine remains critical and difficult. You could put it more accurately. So what is the situation? Ukrainian forces have hit 18 oil sites in Russia. Accordingly, Russia is feeling this pressure on their energy sector, and the ban on gasoline exports has started to take effect until December 31st. Supposedly, the goal that Ukraine is pursuing, Europe is suggesting to us that we need to exhaust Russia's economy, is being achieved if we take these indicators into account, or what?
I'll tell you this, Tatiana, if America or Europe were hitting those oil depots, I would honestly and sincerely be happy because Putin wouldn't really be able to do anything in response. When Ukraine strikes, I know there will be retaliation and deaths. My satisfaction lasts just 5 minutes, and something even more frightening lies behind it. Sadly, all Ukrainians and Ukrainian society are victims of this again. Try to understand. Imagine, just picture the situation. Imagine that Ukraine managed to defeat Russia militarily. Imagine the Ukrainian flag, I don't know, over the Kremlin. Let's take the most fantastic scenario under Zelensky. After that, everyone will leave Ukraine. Because with this person, if that happens, he'll just feel chosen and he'll completely lose his mind. Because right now he already feels like some kind of missionary. As I was told, and as everyone has already noted, I'm for a draw. We had a draw with an advantage for Ukraine. In April-May of 2022, Russia got hit so hard that Putin himself initiated signing that Istanbul agreement and to somehow part ways. They didn't sign it for certain purposes. Weakening Russia and its economy was necessary, but it shouldn't come at Ukraine and Ukrainians' expense. I support weakening and bombing Russia, leaving nothing, but not if it harms Ukraine and Ukrainians. That's the key difference. People don't understand that.
While these strikes on oil depots are happening, there are also strikes on Ukrzaliznytsia. Ukrzaliznytsia has also been attacked by Russia. And they say that if this happens in regions like Odessa or Sumy, then critical logistical arteries will be damaged. Then the economy will suffer from this. How can we supply weapons, or even if not weapons, food and basic necessities to the military? How can we provide for people who live closer to the fighting? With medicine. That's what our government is counting on. Why aren't they protecting us? Why don't they care? Why are they shelling us?
Well, you're asking me this question as if I'm in power. I can only speak generally, can't influence processes, and lack full information. I don't know what to do since I only have an outsider's perspective and lack inside details. I said that there shouldn't be anything left of Russia, I mean the Putin regime. Because I don't wish death on ordinary Russians, for example. We don't know what someone is thinking, then a drone strikes, they die, or a child is frightened. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It's better to end the war. I was specifically talking about the regime. Regarding what you said, we have to admit Russia has significant capabilities, and there are things like railway hubs, we have nuclear facilities, the energy system. Winter is coming now, it's October 2nd, winter is ahead. It will be sad, it will be sad. I already have a rough idea where this is going. Most likely Trump is trying to intimidate Putin until the very end. That I'll give tomahawks, I'll provide intelligence for serious strikes. And what I said will happen again. We'll get satisfaction for 5 minutes, but the response will be terrible and frightening. I only have hope for Trump here, let me tell you that. Why? Putin is predictable, we know him. I figured him out in the early 2000s when I was nearly a teenager. He's not the kind of person who will initiate peace now, just because they hit the oil depots and the infrastructure related to oil and all the processing. Only Trump can somehow bring this about. Imagine everything escalates into a fierce war. We strike deep into Russia, they retaliate, and this continues for 3 months. Well, does that solve anything? Tell me. Imagine how many casualties and how much grief there would be. No, that's why I support diplomacy. No matter how hard or terrifying our strikes, the response will be equally strong.
Why did I ask you a question? I quoted Major General Andriy Hnatov, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He gave an interview and said that indeed our president talked about the fact that there would be a blackout in Moscow if Russia fired at Ukraine. Accordingly, missiles, drones, and so on. But he says the following, look, any action by the enemy aimed at harming our country will receive a symmetrical response. So everything was said absolutely correctly. Both the president and we will find ways to respond to Russia. That's why I'm saying that they're planning to shell, because Andriy Hnatov is stating this. What will happen in Ukraine, what we should expect, is still unknown for now. They're talking about how to pay the military this year because there's an opportunity to pay until November, but after that it's unclear. Ruslana Pidlasa, whom we talked about last time, said that if it weren't for the war, our gross domestic product would be like Poland's. But the situation is different. That's why there's no way to pay salaries. 300 billion hryvnias for the budget of 2025. Is it not enough to cover these needs? Where can we find the money?
You could say we would be in first place in the world by gross domestic product if we were in America. This is about how Ruslana Pidlas lives. I heard a rumor that Zelensky almost in an ultimatum demanded 30 billion euros from Europe for continuing the war. And he's not just planning to pay the military with it, but also to raise their salaries. I'll explain why the salaries are being raised. I deeply respect everyone on the front lines in Ukraine who follows the rules, unlike those seeking publicity, politics, or self-fulfillment. When Putin came to power, he provided social benefits, invested in security forces and the military, and benefited from soaring oil prices in the early 2000s. So, if you raise the salaries of the military, you feel like the military is behind me, and who would go against the military? Remember when Yermak said, we'll bring everyone into the president's office, now including the military? That's a sneaky trick, because imagine if you and I, plus the military, go on air. I'm not a military man, I haven't been to the front, so I'll be sitting there and speaking badly about the military, because that's the right thing to do. I have nothing good to say about those working in the president's office. They won't hire competent people there, they'll hire obedient ones. And most likely those who are ready to steal, those who are ready to serve the regime. What situation will we be in? In a very ugly situation before a certain part of our population, and that's exactly what they're aiming for. It's like creating a kind of cover for himself. He awarded Beletsky, he awarded the Security Service of Ukraine officer Poklad. It's all part of the same story. He's building a support base for himself, which he'll use when he goes to the elections. A cover means protection. It's street slang, but that's really all it is.
It's hard to wrap your head around because not long ago we were discussing the budget for 2026 and there were salary increases for teachers and doctors, packages for students, and student scholarships were being raised. They said 60 billion was missing and needed to be found. The war would last another year. The Minister of Finance talked about this. And this is already the situation of the month, and it turns out that there are currently 300 billion hryvnias missing. So how did they plan for the next one?
But they don't really live by plans, they live just trying to get through the next month. Many of these statements are made for different markets, for the domestic market. And Pidlasa might have said it for the external market, like in Europe, they'll quote it and say, come on, get moving, help us out, you know? You mentioned the medical workers. We talked about the military, and I'm in favor of high salaries for the military. But for that, we need to create a professional army, end the war. There's no question about that. And create a professional army with high salaries for professional soldiers. I'm in favor of raising salaries for medical workers. Thank you. We need to privatize healthcare. Medicine should be private with the highest salaries because the work of all medical professionals is priceless. It's almost the same with teachers. When there's a dictator, excuse me, Ukraine is broke and he keeps saying, we'll raise this, we'll raise that. With what money? So you end up taking out loans just to raise salaries, but that's nonsense. Imagine owning a private company that's losing money and you take charge. All right, I'm giving everyone a raise. How are you raising them? I took out a loan. Well, you're just using credit, but the company wasn't successful before and it still won't be. That's why Ukraine struggles under Zelensky's leadership.
People analyzed this situation and said back then, at the time when the budget was being adopted, that this project was just an election campaign. But we see no elections are planned. So it was just an initiative, as they said, to support the spirit of the people.
No, you know, there are some very serious rumors going around that the elections will take place in the spring of 2026. Very serious rumors. And it started again. This is the 5th or 6th time in 2 years the campaigning work has gone unnoticed. Offices are opening up in the regions. Newspapers are being put into mailboxes. There's servant of the people. I'm getting some information from Kiev. Things have started to move. Maybe they know something we don't. I know for sure that every time Trump comes here, when he talks with Zelensky and the rest of the team, the topic of elections always comes up. They understand that Zelensky is now acting without a mandate from the people, so anything could still happen. I see all of this exactly as preparation for the elections. I see it as preparation for the elections. It's October, so these elections are in 7 months. That's right. It takes about 6 months to prepare thoroughly. That's how they started.
People, I'm asking you, please subscribe to the Liberty UA channel. Opinion leaders will approach us and you'll either listen and form your own opinions, critique them, or seek other perspectives. Let's talk about Sky News. They published an article today on the 1st of October, and there was a comment in that article, a comment from a military analyst saying that supposedly Ukraine is preparing, that there could be some major attack on Crimea. It could be some kind of landing operation to destabilize the Russians somewhere there. There could even be strikes on the Kerch Bridge. So we are now seeing attacks on railways. The situation in Odessa is like this, and here they are saying that we might bomb Crimea. What do you think? Can this information be trusted?
I don't trust the British at all, but I can tell you I read what you just mentioned and I can tell you something else. Imagine this actually happened. Let's imagine that we destroyed the Crimean Bridge. Let's even imagine that what was planned in 2023, the famous counteroffensive, that we cut off access to Crimea there. And they're in a panic. Here's a simple question. Will Putin just watch this and wave a white flag? No, he'll strike back with a tactical nuke and show Trump, look, see, I have no restraints or red lines. I'm not asking people to fear Putin, but to think and act wisely. You can't just jump into a fist fight with a world boxing or kickboxing champion if you're an overweight older man. That's about it. If you're thinking straight, you'll find a way to avoid it. But trying to tough it out like that, well, if they don't hit Britain, they'll hit Ukraine. The British can sacrifice all of us, our country, our people. That's not a major issue for them, as with other Europeans. But is it necessary to do this? What's the point of this? Look, what's the point? In Crimea, they hate Ukraine. To my great regret, that's how we handle things. That's the kind of people there are with brainwashed minds. Everyone together, both sides are to blame. But what's the practical point of this? They'll just hate even more. Yes, the Kremlin will react and Putin will face political consequences. But is removing Putin from power really our global goal? But if that's really the goal, I want to see the person who set that goal and is willing to take responsibility for the timeline. If that's the goal, people used to ask, but why? What's the point? To have a snack in Crimea? Putin will be overthrown and we will win. They said those things live on air in 2023. I watched and listened. I had the impression that these were completely mentally unstable people. How can you make such a plan? This is nonsense. It's just absurd. That's why this Brit is making such statements. It boosts their bravado.
There was another show of bravado there. There was already talk that Trump would provide tomahawks and even give locations of military targets, intelligence, that kind of information to Ukrainian forces so they could strike them. Who do you think is the initiator of this?
For me, I see all of this as an attempt to scare Putin. For some reason, I'm convinced, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm convinced that this won't happen. This statement seems directed at Putin, who is giving a speech now. I'm wondering if he'll address it at the Valdai Forum or whatever it's called. But again, we're moving on with you. But let's imagine that this happened. Let's just say they bombed everything and so on. Then Zelensky would feel not just like Churchill, but like Churchill cubed. The question is simple. For what purpose? And after, will life in Ukraine be possible? Let's imagine that Zelensky wins the next election. Let's model it. The election takes place in 2026, Zelensky wins, and he'll rule until at least 2031, having come to power in 2019. So that's 12 years in power, half the term of Lukashenko, whom he recently criticized. He says over there 2 old men are sitting talking about old age, each having been in power for 30, 20 years. He's quite a character, with Putin and Lukashenko as his role models. And that's because of this. That's why I'm wary of everything. If it ends in a draw, everyone goes their separate ways. And Ukraine needs to be completely changed. As for what happens in Russia, I don't care. I'll be honest, because I know if we integrate well into the global economy, economically speaking, I don't know, just ally with the United States and everything in Ukraine will be fine. And if we end up with those United States Agency for International Development appointees winning again, that Soros gang again, thank you, then it's over. Just like it would be over if the pro-Russian gang comes to power. We need a political process and a third option. Neither United States Agency for International Development, Soros, nor pro-Russian Soviets, but a third choice will exist in Ukraine if democracy prevails.
By the way, you mentioned United States Agency for International Development. So tell me about the situation that happened with the prank calls, when supposedly Russian pranksters obtained information and pretended to be an official. Specifically, Poroshenko, they called the former president of United States Agency for International Development, and during the conversation with her, they found out that supposedly cash was being given to Ukraine. It was millions of dollars per month. Billions, yes, per month. And one thing is interesting, where did this money come from? Did they print it? Did it fall from the sky? Where did this money come from? How was it given out so that no one controlled it? And where did it go in Ukraine?
I will cover this topic very seriously and separately because it is so important. These 2 pranksters are clearly working for the Russian special services, but here they actually worked for Ukraine without even realizing it. They opened people's eyes, hoping this would make them want Putin's pro-Russian narrative in Ukraine. No, they're helping me with this. Regarding cash, where could the cash come from? American intelligence agencies have access to any amount of cash. It's the government, that's option number 1. The second option is more specific. Soros manages it, but there were claims of giving 1.5 billion in cash.
It's because of the war. Without it, they wouldn't have given it, since this is from 22, right?
I dreamed that they've also been doing something there with cash for many years. This isn't recorded anywhere with those who need it in Ukraine, but it was just a dream I had. I can't say that it was real, but let's imagine $1.5 billion in reality. They unloaded and loaded them somewhere. And with people like Zelensky and Yermak involved, you think they wouldn't be tempted? The whole group would be. Out of 1.5 billion for Ukraine, probably only $500 million or a third remains at best. $1 billion just vanished. And that wasn't the only time this happened. We're discussing cash and wire transfers, including all those aids. Even America is investigating this now. Recently, I can't recall who was speaking. He said they allocated funds without approval, or maybe it was Auer who said it. They did it without any approval or something. And now, under Trump, everything needs to be approved. You have to go through a bunch of checks. There's your answer as to who needs war. 1% in Ukraine is living their best life, getting everything they want. And I want to emphasize, not by earning money, but like this. In a shameful way, if you ask me.
She said that they give cash specifically, because if it's not cash, there will be some bureaucratic schemes. There's no time to wait because war is coming. That was the reason. But as for where this money was going, supposedly, well, that's what Russian media say. I don't know. They say it was supposedly for propaganda. Do you think something like that could happen in Ukraine due to money?
Well, of course. You see, it's all about information. People often underestimate the media space. First of all, it's a powerful weapon. Secondly, it's a kind of power in its own right. And sometimes a word turns out to be more influential than even bullets or something like that. That's why it's so valued. That's why so much money is invested in it. But look here. They finance propaganda. They basically cut everyone off from freedom of speech. Putin never stood a chance. Anyone who supported him would have been destroyed in Ukraine. It's impossible. Almost no pro-Putin people remain in Ukraine, probably under 5% after the war. He even bombed Russian-speaking cities. So what do we see? The Territorial Recruitment Center, lawlessness. Did those Soros-backed United States Agency for International Development media outlets cover this? No, people were killed at the border, drowned in the Tisa River, and they don't care. Samantha Power sits there and says, we invested in Ukraine's democracy. In democracy, she says, show me this democracy. First of all. Second, what does it mean, invested? When you say the word invested, you're expecting something in return, either profit or something else, some kind of benefit for yourself. What benefits are there? Only one, to weaken Russia at the expense of Ukraine. And I think when they handed out this cash, and believe me, for Soros, and if it's American intelligence agencies, these billions are just pennies, you could say. They were rubbing their hands together. Finally, someone like Zelensky emerged, willing to get involved and shed blood. Before the war, there was a Russia-United States of America summit in Geneva between Biden and Putin. Putin probably told him there will be a war. They shook hands, so a war was inevitable, and Ukraine was set up for it. They were satisfied with Zelensky, who agreed, but I would have done everything to stop the war. It's not about capitulating or surrendering to Putin. War must not be allowed under any circumstances. Look at how cautiously Poland, Romania, and the Scandinavian countries are behaving right now. Cautiously, very cautiously. But somewhere Hungarian drones were spotted at the border with Ukraine. Zelensky is making a statement. Tomorrow we'll all be shooting them down again, and he, thinks the same way. Well, it needs to be a little different, but let's move on. Even when they were giving this money, they said that Zelensky was told at the time, prepare the country for war, evacuate people, build barriers, but he even refused to obey United States Agency for International Development on this matter. That's the scary part. At first, we were surrounded by 200,000 Russian soldiers, and if only we had understood more then, there would really be a war. And I didn't believe them, I just couldn't believe it. Would Democrats in Central Europe really allow a war to start, regardless of what kind of person Biden is? When those maps were published, I thought maybe a new anti-terrorist operation in eastern Ukraine at most. But Kyiv, that surprised me. And then I remember it clearly. On February 23rd at 6 p.m., someone wrote to me, I won't say who or from where. Tanks are 30 kilometers from the border. War will start in hours. Do you understand? It's a nightmare. And people have somehow already forgotten all of this. And Zelensky, it's like they've forgotten that we were told we'll roast them. People only remember things for a week. It's just this week's news. But what happened 3 years ago? 4 years, as if they never existed. Now he's a hero for some reason. United States Agency for International Development is finally revealing its true nature, and I'm glad to see it. Sorry, this is crap and should be removed from Ukraine permanently.
And now he even seems to be aiming for the Nobel Prize. Are you aware of this information? And a group of Ukrainian deputies thinks it's necessary. They've created such a bill and want to appeal to the people who will be making the decision, saying that Trump should be nominated.
Yes, Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm convinced the war in Ukraine will end. I'm 99.9% sure, whether it ends soon or not. It's a matter of time because dealing with Putin or with Zelensky is quite a so-called pleasure, in quotes. These are just sketches from before Trump, you understand. Just a couple of months ago, they were calling him names, spreading propaganda against him, and everyone in the president's office despises, hates, and mocks Trump. Who started these talks about Agent Krasnov? Right after the Oval Office, after that scandal. That's it, Agent Krasnov. The scary part is, even when someone like Gordon said whatever he wanted, people believed him. When in Israel they were hanging banners saying, thank you, Mr. President Trump, that's it, thank you for this, for that, and about Trump's supporters in Israel. It's all powerful interactions. Same in Ukraine. Gallup, which is a reputable sociological company here, conducted a survey. 65% of people in Ukraine are against Trump. And what bad things did Trump do? He's the only one who's trying to end the war, the only one under whom we had 4 years without war. De facto and de jure, there was an anti-terrorist operation, but hardly anyone was dying and things were calming down. The Democrats are coming back, under whom Putin took Crimea and Donbas from us. The Democrats are coming back. A terrible war is starting and people dislike Trump. Do you know why people dislike him? I'll tell you. And why do they really hate Trump in Russia? Because of the post-communist syndrome. A person who is bright, charismatic, how should I put it, behaves completely differently. Soviet people don't accept that. They want everyone to be more modest, like everyone else. They want a strong leader like Lukashenko who isn't afraid to go into a cow shed and get dirty. That's the kind of person they need. But a successful person is someone intelligent. I repeat, that's not for them. He annoys them. Success bothers the post-Soviet Soviet person.
As for Trump, there were statements like that when he gathered with the generals and told them what they should do. If they don't do that or they don't like it, they can resign. What kind of physical shape they should maintain. People picked up on this initiative, saying that Trump communicates with the generals in a harsh, despotic, militarized way. Supposedly, they didn't respect him. On the contrary, they were scared and wanted things to be different, for him to be gentler, softer. Well, you understand what I mean, right? So that it would be a little easier and more comfortable to communicate with him, but it seemed like he made them feel uncomfortable.
What you're saying right now, it's funny to say. That's just how Russian propaganda portrayed it. Look, Trump is a dictator, and ours did too. If you look at the public pages, you'll see they took things out of context. They cut out pieces and insulted Trump. That's their true attitude. Dictator, this, that. They don't understand America. Here, you can't create a dictatorship because checks and balances and independent courts prevent it. There were concerns under Biden and the left, but now everything is fine. Well, what can you say to such people? Well, you see, when an unsuccessful country drowning in blood, which unfortunately Putin has destroyed, we've lost many people, people are miserable and destitute, and yet we mock and try to teach the most successful country in the world how to live, the country we all ask for help from, without which we would simply fall. Something is wrong with these people, that's all I can say. We should stay quiet and focus on building a successful country. And only then maybe say something to someone, but for now quietly keep silent and get things done.
Thank you for this meaningful conversation. People, I urge you to just subscribe to our channel, Liberty UA, because we have leaders coming to us with very valuable thoughts, and it's very interesting to listen to them. Please subscribe, write comments, like, and subscribe to Denis Eliseevich's channel. Denis, thank you for being with us, for staying in touch. All the best.
Thank you, thank you.